All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Trades Talk. Maggie here, and our guest today is Ryan Englin. Ryan owns a company called Core Matters, and his big focus is on hiring for the trades. So he recently released a book, but hire better people faster, and his tagline is making the trade school again. Ryan came to us wanting to be on the podcast just to, get his message out there about how important how we go about hiring is. And I took away so much from the episode today. And I don't even hire people in the trades. I hire people in tech. So, Justin, I can't even imagine how many takeaways you had from today's episode.
Yeah, guys, it's April and we are cranking. Everyone's hiring, everyone's ramping up. So we thought this podcast episode and guest came at a great time. I think the big takeaways for me is just the idea of having a vision. Ryan's going to dive into what that means and really dissect the components of that. And then there's a lot of great back and forth between Maggie and Ryan on specific interview questions, which I was taking a bunch of notes on. So this is really an applicable episode to hiring, but not just hiring. It's really building a culture that you can be proud of, a culture that sustains, and a culture that grows. So that's my big takeaways on this, Maggie.
Yeah, I think for me, he talks about appealing a lot to the emotional side, not only in your job posting, but in your interview, and understanding that, like, even when they send you an application and when an applicant sends in their resume, just letting them know that you got it, because you're creating an atmosphere, you're creating an experience for them that appeals to their emotional state. And that's how we recognize and hire the right people, and also set ourselves up for retainment.
Yeah, I think you can really feel Ryan's passion come through on the episode. And it's clear he's found his place, his passion in his career based on going from the corporate gig and everything else. He's kind of landed in this spot of hiring better people faster. And I think this is going to be one of those episodes you walk away and you actually change some of your processes from it. So he wrote a book called Hire Better People Faster. You can find that. We go into that. He's got a podcast called Titans of the Trades. So if you like what you hear, go look at more stuff from Ryan Englin. Without further ado, let's jump in. All right, guys, we're here with Ryan Englin from Core Matters. And he also has a podcast called Titans of the Trades and a book that we're going to jump into called Hire Better People Faster. Ryan, welcome to the podcast today.
Oh, Justin, Maggie, thank you for having me.
Well, Ryan, let's jump right into this. Give us a little background on, what inspired you to write a book? What was your background leading up to today? You started a podcast. You're obviously a mover and shaker in this industry. We're excited to have you on. Let's start there with some background, and then we'll dive into some more details.
Yeah. I grew up in a blue collar family. My dad was an owner operator. We know a lot of them. And he had this belief that, if I go do it myself, I can make more money. I can have more time. I can have more freedom. We know so many owner operators that did that. And I remember getting out of school and my mom putting me in the car and driving me down to the shop, or going down there with him on the weekends, because he never was able to break out of that. So fast forward to graduation, and, I did what every good son would do. And I told him, I'm not going into the family business. I'm going to go to college instead. And so I went the corporate route because I thought that's what I wanted to do. And the more that I learned about how businesses operate and how businesses grow, the more I realized that my dad needed help, and he needed to learn things that he wasn't taught. And I thought that the problem was more customers. He needed to be able to retain more customers. So he always chasing. So I started a marketing company, did that for a few years, working mostly with home service contractors, all blue collar, all in the trades. And what I realized was it wasn't more customers, it was more good people.
Yeah.
And there was a turning point for me. I had an HVAC contractor. I lived in Phoenix at the time. They were a Phoenix contractor, and it was July. You ever been to Phoenix in July?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 110, 120 last year, I think.
Yeah. So the thing is they would get a call to come in and they would book it 3 weeks out. They had so few techs. The calendar was completely full. So they're like, oh, your AC's out? Yeah, we can be there. How's 3 weeks from Tuesday? It's like, nobody's going to wait.
Let me guess. They call the next HVAC contractor.
Well, what was happening? They would book. They would take it in case everybody was like that. They'd call the next one and then they'd cancel in a week. And so they shut down the leads. And I said, well, why are we shutting down leads? Like, this is your season. Like, go. And they go, we got 4 empty trucks. we don't know how to fill them. We can't find good techs. It's the busy season. They're all busy. So I said, let me see if I can solve that problem, because I had this epiphany when I was in corporate that recruiting is a marketing activity. I was doing marketing. I can do this. 3 weeks later, they called me back. They said, turn the leads back on. We filled the 4 trucks. We have 2 more on order because we found 2 more techs. Like, let's let it ride. I was like, that was cool. That was fun. I got to help them with something that no one else is helping them with. Fast forward a couple of years, realized that it wasn't just about creating opportunities for new applicants. It was actually helping them hire and interview and onboard and retain. And I developed the CoreFit hiring system, and then ended up writing the book, which got published last year, to help people like my dad who were caught in this rat race. You know, some people call it the revenue roller coaster. Go get the revenue, go work on the revenue, go get the revenue, go work on the revenue. And really what it is they can find people they can trust, and they can build highly productive teams. Their teams will help them get out of that rat race and that revenue roller coaster. The teams can take it to the next level. So I wrote the book for people like my dad, who had this belief that working for myself is going to make me more money, is going to give me more time, is going to do more, but they never were taught how to actually recruit and build effective teams. Because if they can do that, they can get everything they want out of their business.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more there.
This hits home pretty hard with me. I was working for a landscape company, and in 2015, that landscape company relied heavily on H-2B workers, and they didn't get their H-2B workers. And we really felt the pain of that. We had to actually, our head of marketing flipped the script on her role and did the same thing. She turned her marketing of the business into marketing of the employees and marketing of, to prospective employees. This philosophy taught her that hiring and marketing were very hand in hand and should always be hand in hand, right? More revenue, more employees. So one question, speaking from watching your dad's business grow, how do you recommend, or you see companies in the trades, whether it be good or bad, forecasting their hiring, especially seasonal companies? What good practices, bad practices have you come into encounter during your time working with those companies?
Well, I think the reality is some sectors of the industry are just built around seasonality, and they're gonna have people that come work for them and then take a few months off in the slow season. I think that's just built in. It's ingrained in some workforces. Now, there's always going to be the best of the best that you want to keep. You don't want to release them because they may not come back. And some of that I've seen some companies find ways to, like landscapers, for example, get into snow removal. I've seen roofing companies get into hanging up Christmas lights. I've seen them find ways to keep their people busy during the off season. But I think when it comes to forecasting, before you think the solution is go hire more people, really take a step back and say, do I have the right people? Are they the most productive people? Because one person can sometimes do the work of, a good person can do the work of 3 not good people. And so maybe there's a way to hold on to that one person during the slow season.
Yeah, I think being strategic, but also intentional about who you really focus on holding and who you potentially lay off in the slow season is important. And historically, trade companies kind of use the hierarchy of who's been here longer. That is probably a good argument as why that may be the best way to do it from a cultural standpoint. But you have to look at technical skill as well and really ask yourself, who is the best person for this position and who is the best leader to help us build the team next season. It's a tough position to be in, especially in landscaping in states like Chicago, where the winter is pretty much shut down unless you're doing snow.
Yeah.
So Ryan, I really want to unpack this whole, you mentioned the CoreFit hiring system. I'd love to unpack this and really understand what are the steps through this system that you help your clients find and hire better people.
I think the place we need to start is this idea that we want better people. Yet most companies, most leaders don't take the time to define better. Like, what does better really mean? Do they mow the grass faster? Do they clean up faster? Is that what we're talking about for better? Or where most people go and they tell me is they show up on time. They have a strong work ethic. They take care of the customer. They clean up the job site. It's all the intangibles. It's the soft skills that we really want. That's how we define better. And I think it's important to get really clear on what better means. And most people have never really sat down and written it down and said, this is what better means for us. So I think starting there is one of the best places. And if you're struggling with that, It might be because you haven't defined what your company does, what you believe, what you stand for, what you value. So that's when we start talking about core, which is the most important part of our system, is making sure you have a core vision and a core story. Really understanding who you are first, then it's easier to define better. And then you can start attracting those types of people to who you are as a company.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I took over a really large team. And one of the first things that I put into place was identifying what defines us as a team. What are the basic minimal characteristics, things that you should be doing in your job that makes you a part of this team? And then identifying who's doing those and who's going over and beyond on those. So it's like, okay, be a member of the team. Here's the 10, we call them the 10 great work habits. Here's the 10 great work habits that you should have on a daily basis, but then who's taking those to the next level? And that's how we've defined better. Probably still a little subjective, but it's at least given us a baseline structure of like, when you show up to work every single day, here's the 10 minimal things that you need to do to be a member of this team.
Yeah, and I agree. And while 10 might be a lot, for some companies it might not. Like it really depends on your company. Usually the better is defined in more of those behaviors and more of how we want people to show up. Because at the end of the day, we can teach people simple equipment maintenance. We can teach people how to follow a process or use our CRM. We can teach those things. A lot of the stuff that we can't teach are those behaviors, those things that are just built in that they've always believed their whole life.
I know at K&D, we've gone through the journey where I would say like 2018, we thought we really knew what those behaviors were. And we thought we really knew what the culture we wanted was. But as we scaled and went from 50 to 100 employees, we realized we weren't defining better. We weren't defining the core values as clearly as we should have been. And we also found that even though you say one of our core values is professionalism to Ryan and professionalism to Justin and professionalism to Maggie could mean three different things.
And it does.
And it does.
Yeah.
And then when you bring
does.
cultural backgrounds and differences and people who grew up in different countries, you really get this wide band of what professionalism means.
Yeah.
So we've realized that our core values had to be defined much more intensely and intentionally. So now today, I feel like we are in a better spot when we are looking for, let's say, an account manager. We have a better idea of who we're looking for and what the core values, the behaviors behind that are. But we have gone through a lot of turnover and we've gone through a lot of people and it's cost us money and clients and time and energy. And it's a two-way street. Like I feel bad for those employees that no longer work here who spent so many years, maybe months, but mostly years, trying to fit into that culture that never really fit them properly. And now they're maybe finding their place at another company. And now that we've defined it better, we're able to find people who fit our core values and our culture better. But it's not an easy thing to define. And I don't think you could just name it and define it and then the next day go hire. So Ryan, what's your recommendation when a company is trying to make this shift, to be more intentional about their hiring and define their core values and define what matters? You know, how do they go about that and how long does it usually take?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the way that we even did it at Core Matters is we brought in an outside expert who was not emotionally tied to the outcome, who didn't have those preconceived biases, who didn't have any of those issues. We brought an outside expert that could actually sit down and help us figure out what our value system was. And I believe that that is one of the most effective ways for other companies to do it. I know a lot of companies work on self-implementing that. Like, let's figure out what our culture is. Let's define it ourselves. And it becomes this aspirational exercise. Oh, we're all about our people. Like we had one client that they said, oh, people first was one of their core values, was people first. And so we interviewed a bunch of their team members and every team member was like, absolutely, as long as you're a customer. Yeah, they had this belief that, no, we put our people first. Well, your people didn't feel that way. So it becomes this exercise in aspiration and this desire to create what we think we are creating. But the reality is often something different. So I would say bring in outside experts. That's one of the things we do at Core Matters. One of the first things we do is get you really clear on your employer brand. And we shift the way people think about it. And when they are able to disconnect themselves from their business, from their day-to-day, it becomes a lot easier to get through that process.
Definitely agree. when you say vision and story, can we define that a little bit more? Because I think vision is used very frequently and means so many different things to different people. So how
Yeah.
do you define vision and story for a company?
So the core vision is made up of three different components. The first one is what's acceptable behavior? How do we behave inside of this company? Some people call behaviors core values. See, I believe that a core value should be a verb. It should be something that we can see. It should be something where people take action, which is why I struggle with core values of like integrity. Show me integrity. Well, now you have to define it another way. So that's one part of it, how you behave. And that's important because if we want people to feel like they belong here and we want us to feel like they belong here, we have to know what aligned behaviors look like. That's one part of it. The next part of it is our destination. Where are we going as a company? We've all heard of that metaphorical bus. We got to get the right people in the right seats.
Jim Collins.
And then those leaders, once they're in the right seats, can figure out where the bus is going. And then Jim Collins moves on to other metaphors. But now that you know where the bus is going, you still have an empty bus. We have to fill that bus up with employees. So when there's a detour or traffic jam or a delay or the bus breaks down, when our business goes through those things, do the people go, whoo, finally I can get off the bus? Or do they stay on the bus and say, let me help you get it back on the road? If they're so excited about the destination, where you're going, some companies and consultants call that the vision. If you know where your company is going, you can start attracting the right people. Because somebody that's excited about going skiing this weekend might get on your bus. But if you say, hey, we're going water skiing, all of a sudden those snow skiers are like, I'm out.
I've never heard the bus analogy taken to the next level in such a great way. Like that idea of they're so bought into the destination and the bus breaks down, they're not getting off the bus. They're going to help you fix it, get it there. So that's fantastic.
I'm building my bus right now. So I have a lot of open requisitions on my team. And one thing that I feel like stops me is I am so protective of who gets on my bus. And because I've heard this time and time again, one bad hire can ruin a whole team. And I have spent endless time building my team, building my culture to be where I want it to be. So I feel like I stop myself from bringing in the volume that I need to bring in. And so I think it's a Gary Vee clip I've seen one time. It's like, how do you know you're hiring the right people? And he interrupts and says, you don't. You fire quickly. You learn to fire quickly if you want to be good at
There's some truth to that, but I don't know if I agree with that completely.
And I feel the same way as you do, Ryan. Like there's definitely some truth to that. But one thing that I always say to people who join my bus is the quickest way to get on the next level bus is by living and breathing our core values and really putting those to practice. But the quickest way to find the emergency exit is to not live our core values and to trash my team. And so what would you say to someone like myself who tends to put walls and barriers in front of her hiring because she's so protective of who joins her team?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with being picky. I don't think there's anything wrong with being intentionally picky about who joins your team. Just keep in mind that you may not be able to hire as quickly as you'd like. And you definitely can't be desperate. So you have to make sure you have the time. You don't have work piling up, because the worst thing you can do is not hire someone, let the work pile up, because we're going to get someone someday. And then you find that rock star employee, you hire them and you're like, good news, I got 6 months of backlog for you. We're so excited to have you here. So you have to make sure that you're not desperate to fill those positions because you have work piling up. If you do get to the point where work's piling up, you need to move a little more quickly and maybe be a little less picky up front, just so that there's not a backlog when you do find that rock star.
So let's say that then the other obstacle is the volume, right? So I have a lot of open positions, and if I am picky, which you say is a good thing in some cases, what if I'm not getting the volume? What do you recommend to companies if they're not seeing the volume of applicants? I see in the background of your screen right now more applications. So how do you recommend getting more applications?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to finish the third one that Justin asked. Like, how do we define the vision? And I think this will help answer that question too. Is we have to give people a reason why. So we get them, we show them how they should behave when they get on the bus. We tell them where the bus is going, but then we have to give them a reason why they should get on the bus in the first place. We call that purpose. The modern workforce, they want purpose. They want to know that they get out of bed and they get to do something that makes an impact, whether it's an impact in their community, an impact in their family, an impact in their personal lives, an impact on their team. They want to make sure they have that. See, I believe you've probably heard this before, but I believe that people don't leave jobs, they leave
Bosses.
Yeah. I mean, that's really, really what it is. They leave other people. Yet every single job ad, if we were to go to Indeed right now, 99 out of 100 of them, we're an awesome company because we've been in business for 45 years and our people love working here. And here's why you're going to love working here too. You're going to get to do this and this and this and this and this. And at the end of the day, we're going to pay you X. How much of that job ad appeals to them in that emotional state of, I want to work for someone different? It doesn't. It appeals to, you know how to do X, 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 and X, which means I'm going to pay you Y. And they look at that and they go, my current boss has me do X, 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 and he pays me Y. Like, why would I come work for you? And we never give them that sense, that why, those behaviors, the what we're really looking for. We treat our job ads when we post them online like a window sticker on a $150,000 Corvette. It's a list of all the features that you're going to get and the benefits or pay. But Chevy would never take a window sticker and put it on a commercial during the Super Bowl for 30 seconds and hope people are going to go buy a Corvette. No, they appeal to that emotional state. What is it they really want in a car? They want the lifestyle. They want the excitement. They want the friends. They want the status. You'll never see a Chevy commercial with, hey, and here's how much it costs, and here's how to maintain it, and here's how fast it is. Never. It's all about the lifestyle it creates, because that's what people pay for. And if we believe that people switch jobs for other people, and we want to increase applicant flow, we need to show them why we're a better boss. We're a better group of people to work for. And it should be all about the people.
So true. It's just really hitting home to me right now. Last month, we hosted a virtual mixer to hire people. And one piece that I thought was so important was to bring on some of my recently promoted team members to tell their story. To all these potential applicants out there, I'm like, tell your story. Tell them why we're different. And I think we had a lot of success from that hiring mixer. And I think it all comes back to those stories from those people whose lives have been changed by working under myself and under my team.
You work with a lot of trades businesses. When you get in, Brant, you come into a company, obviously they have a problem. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be talking and reaching out to you. You know, how often do you see these companies wait until their work is completely backlogged and it's just hiring is just such a last line on the to-do list because it's getting the bid out, getting the customer stuff back and the invoicing done? Like,
yeah,
I know it falls to the bottom of our list until it becomes this urgent matter. You know, what should some of the companies do out there to just be proactive and keep hiring on the top of the list? I mean, is there anything that you would recommend companies do to just not fall down into that trench?
Yeah, I wish more people would call me and say, hey, I know I need to hire 2 new techs in 60 days, but they never do. They'll call me and they go, I should have hired techs at the beginning of the busy season. And now here we are smack dab in the middle of it. I'm desperate. I'll do whatever it takes. And, you know, the interesting thing is, so many times we don't do anything as leaders until it personally starts affecting us. I cannot tell you how many times I've had someone I was talking to cancel, no show, ghost me because an emergency came up. I'm like, what was that emergency? Oh, I had someone call in today. It's an emergency. You're not staffing properly. You need to make sure you're staffing properly. And it's just the irony of that, right? I can't meet with the person that's going to help me solve this problem because I have the problem. Right. But nobody ever comes to me ahead of time. I will tell you, especially we talk seasonality, the best time to hire people is in the off season. When the busy season starts, they're getting courted left and right. And we never think that though. We think, oh, it's the slow season. I don't have the money. You know what? When it's feast, hold on to some of that so you can pay the guy to onboard him properly, to train him properly. So when the busy season starts, he's 100% ready to go.
Can we talk a little bit about the cost of not having the right person on the team? You know, we talk about this idea of I can't hire in the off season because cash flow and we're slow and everything else. You know, what about if you don't have that hire you need for 30 days or 60 days? You know, can we equate the cost to maybe 3 to 6 months of their salary?
I had a landscaping company in upstate New York I talked to, and he said, in order for me to make it through this year now, we didn't end up working together. He says, I need to hire 17 people. Wow. And I said, okay, well, what's that? It's one of those things where it's like, hey, it's too expensive to invest in this. I just need to hire the people. And I said, well, what's one landscaper technician worth to you? He goes, about $100,000 a year in revenue. And I go, and you need 17 of them. It doesn't take long to do the math to go, maybe I should get some support in solving this problem, because the problem can be solved. There are plenty of people out there. The labor shortage is a myth. There's plenty of people willing to do these jobs. The problem is they don't want to do them for you, which is why you have the turnover, which is why you have the problems with people not applying, because maybe you have a reputation in the marketplace of being a company who hires people with low expectations because you need a set of hands and you're just going to burn them out. And you're just constantly going through. And what I like to say is pencil whipping. Right? Like we get mad at all of our people for pencil whipping the forms and the reports and the invoices and the CRM. Like, stop pencil whipping it. But when it comes to hiring, what do? Oh, they showed up and they breathe. Check. They're willing to work for the money I have. Check. And then we're like, good, we're done. And we throw them off and we give them a crew and we say, hey, your crew leader is going to train you. And we just move on to the next problem. And then we have this rampant turnover and we can't figure out how to solve it. We believe, everybody's lazy, everybody's entitled, no one wants to work anymore. And that's not true.
Not at all.
Problem is, and this is hard for some people to think, is maybe they just don't want to work for you, because people don't leave jobs, they leave people.
Totally agree.
How important would you say exit interviews are to your hiring strategy?
Are you going to do anything with the information? Because
Let's
if you're
just say-
not, don't do them.
I've
If all
worked
you're
for
gonna do is
companies.
justify and rationalize and say, they weren't a good employee anyway, so I'm not, then don't do them. They're just going to piss you off. I love doing exit interviews, but you have to be thick-skinned. You have to be able to look at that and say, what can I do with this information, and actually do something with it? Because if you don't do anything with it, it's all for nothing.
I also feel exit interviews, employees are so checked out on giving you value back that they're going to kind of say whatever they need to say to get out of that exit interview as quick as possible. So it's hard. I don't know if you're going to get the best information, but to Maggie, to your point, I have done some exit interviews where it was a bit of an enlightening moment of a manager who was very toxic. And then to Ryan's question, what do you do? It's, well, I'm going to go interview the people that didn't leave and see if they have similar thoughts. And now we can actually make action on a manager who's poor performing. This idea of having this vision, right? The behaviors, the destination, and the purpose. Having those three is good. Communicating and getting the team to buy into those three is great. And I've noticed with certain people, they will run through a brick wall for you. They will go and walk over fire for you when they truly believe that they and the company are in alignment with the vision. And we've had a few employees who have, one of them that comes to mind, Raphael, he just hit 10 years with us. He's a site supervisor.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm Raf's one of the star team members at KD.
He's that one you could clone if you had a magic wand. You're just like, I want six more of him.
He's amazing. And he's creating leaders, which I'm excited for.
That's fantastic.
He has been through 4 department leaders in his tenure, and he has withstood all of them because he believes in the destination of where we're going. He sees himself in the role at that destination. So even though he's been through a lot of challenges, and now I think he has a great person he reports to, he stood through it. And that's a testament, I think, to having the vision. So I just want to share that because I think it's just so important to share that vision with everybody in the organization.
Well, if people didn't know better, they'd think that you were teeing this up for me, but that's what the core story is. It's how do you communicate that, both internally and externally? Because I find that when companies have a culture they're excited about, when they have values they're excited about, they either do one of two things. They never do both. They either put it on their website, they put it on their vehicle wraps, they put it on their invoices and their estimates, they put it on t-shirts so that everybody outside the company can see it. And all the people who are inside the company are like, well, those are cool, but that's not really who we are. They print out all the posters and the banners and the business cards and they give it to all the employees, but they never share it with the prospective employees, the people they're looking to attract. They never do anything with it externally, and you have to do both. And the core story is what makes it so easy. It is truly a story about what it's like to join our team. It's the idea. We all have a 30-second commercial when someone says, well, what do you do? Well, what would your team say if someone asked them, what's it like to work there? That's what the core story is. That's how we communicate it. And we got to get it out there, and it's got to come out there, not just from the owner and the leaders and the crew members, but everybody is telling that same story. This is what it's like to work there. It's written based on your behaviors and your why and your destination, your vision. It's written based on those things, but it is a story about what it's like to work there. And we need to communicate that to the right people.
So now we've bridged this gap, how we get more applications, how we attract the right people. You have the people in front of you. What are your recommendations as far as interview questions, interview structure, management roles versus individual contributors? Give me your thoughts on the interview process as a whole.
This is my favorite part. The interview is my favorite component. It was the chapter in the book that kind of just wrote itself, because when I was in corporate, I was doing 100 interviews a month, every month for the years I was there. So I got really good at interviewing, and I got really good at understanding human behavior and why some people show up and they're authentic and some aren't. And the trickiest part with the interview is understanding who's being sold, understanding who's buying, understanding how to get each other to be authentic. I hear owners tell me all the time, they're like, I am so tired of all these kids ghosting me. Like, I schedule these interviews and they don't show up. And then I'll pull up their list of applicants and I go, you've got 300 people here that you've never even emailed to say you got their application. Like, as employers, we taught this generation it's okay to ghost. We taught that to them. It's not their fault. 2 out of 3 people will never hear from an employer when they apply. 2 out of 3. 66% of people never hear. So you want better quality applications. We need to convince the workforce that's out there that we care about their application. But we don't do that. We don't let them know we got it. We don't tell them it's not good. We don't tell them we've moved on. We just ignore them because I'm busy. Well, if you want them to put in a little bit of effort, you got to put in a little bit of effort. And that's a principle that comes into interviewing. People ask me all the time, like, how do I get them to be authentic? How do I get them to be real? How many times have we interviewed someone and thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then 3 weeks later going, I don't even know who this person is. Like, is it their doppelganger? Because this is nothing like the interview. And then I dig into the interview process and I find that, the employer's like, hey, can somebody go hide Jimmy when the new recruit comes in? I don't want him to know Jimmy's here. And hey, can we clean up the office a little bit and not let him know we're slobs? And we create this illusion that we're better than we are. And then we get mad when the job seeker does that. So if you want some people to show up authentic, you have to be authentic. We had an electrical contractor years ago. This was back when Indeed allowed this. They don't allow this anymore. But I sat in one of his interviews and he's talking to this woman and she's applying to be the office manager. And she's that kind of person when you see her, you're like, oh my gosh, she's like grandma. She's just going to bake cookies and she's going to take care of all of us. It's just a sweet old lady. But she had 30 some years experience. He's like, this is going to be awesome. He starts dropping F-bombs in the middle of the interview, just like at random. And he gets done and he's like, so what'd you think of my interview? Like, he's all proud of himself. And I was like, go on, tell me. He goes, here's the reality, Ryan. We curse like sailors around here. Like, we curse all the time. I need to know that if someone's going to be operating inside of my office, they have to be okay with the language. I agree. I appreciate that authenticity. Here's what I want to do. I want to drop F-bombs in your job ad that you post on Indeed. He just goes white. He's like, we can't do that. No way can we do that. Well, Indeed used to let you do that. They don't let you do it anymore, but they used to do it. And I was like, yeah, let's just be authentic. Let's drop F-bombs before they waste their time and before we waste our time. But he didn't feel comfortable doing that. And the lesson here is, if you're not comfortable being authentic during the interview, how can we expect them to be authentic during the interview? And the only way we can get them to show up authentically is if they trust us. And the only way they're going to trust us is if we're authentic and we take the time for them to get to know us. Remember, people are not here for a job. They're here for a new set of bosses.
Yeah.
And we've got to show them that we're different.
I think one of the fundamental pieces of my interview is, I have my kids everywhere in my office, conduct most of my interviews sitting here. And I think it's important for them to know about me is, my family comes first. In my life, it's God, my family, and then everyone after that. And I try to allude that, like, hey, like, I understand life happens. I have life happening too. And so I think it's really important that we humanize this. And so I always set the stage with that and then go into what is something that's really important for me to know about you
Mm.
versus tell me about yourself? Because then they're just going to spit off their resume. They're just going to, name things I already know to get brought them to the table. But like that opens up vulnerability. And I feel like that's how I am with the team. That's how
Yeah.
I coach and I care. Hey, how's your mom doing? Oh, I know it's Ramadan that you're fasting. How's your day going? Because you're probably getting low on energy right now. So that's, I think, the question that I've really learned in my course of interviewing is tell me something that's really important to know about you as a person.
So can I give you a couple of variations on that we really like?
I would love it.
So one is on the positive side is what are you obsessed with? Tell me something that you're just so incredibly passionate about that people would call it an obsession. I don't care what the answer is, but you want that passion, excitement to come through.
Love it.
And then on the other side, instead of just letting them pick, because most people are humble, right? They're not going to come out and say this. So a variation I like to say is, what is something that most people get wrong about you? Well, guess what? Most people have something to say on that one, right? And most of the time we get it wrong because maybe they are hiding behind something and people don't know it until they get to really know them. Now, any question that you ask the candidate, I want you to be prepared as the interviewer to answer that same question for them. So think about that for a second. If I ask you, Maggie, what is something people get wrong about you? And you answer that, or maybe even you get stuck and you're like, I don't even know how to answer that question, which will happen a lot during our interviews because they're very different. I would lead with, something that people get wrong about me is this. Now all of a sudden they go, oh, so now we can share. And I'm not the only one being vulnerable. They were just vulnerable with me too, which will create trust, which will allow the conversation to be more authentic. And you're going to get what you want out of it a lot more.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation of going there first. And I think you kind of set the ceiling of vulnerability in the interview as the interviewer. And so if you are vulnerable and you go there, then I've noticed most prospect candidates will also go there.
Yep.
And I've had multiple interviews that like the person has cried in the interview because we got to such a deep level of past trauma in their past working, like at a job where like they were crushed by their boss, and just you hear horrible stories and then you keep asking these like, and how did that feel? And why is that important? And you keep going. And when you can get to that point, you get to you get to one of two destinations. Either one, you get to the point where you're like, all right, this person is probably not a fit, but now I know them really well. And maybe I could hopefully recommend them to a colleague or another company that I know. And then, or you get to a point where this person's going to do so well here because they like truly deep down at a fundamental level, their core values and our core values are in alignment.
Well, and you've created connection. And that's what people want in a workplace nowadays. We are more connected than we've been in the history of the world. We're also more lonely than we've been in the history of the world. And then we go to work and there's this expectation of perform. We don't have time for relationships. A lot of the companies that we talk to, they have this overworked, overwhelmed culture and they're proud of it. Oh, we got more work than we know what to do with. It is so cool. And like, I don't know if that's something to be proud of. I can't tell you how many times people come to us and like, if we don't stop with the reason they come to us is because they need more techs, because their existing techs are burning out. Not because they're like, oh, we want better workload. It's like, I want that guy working 70 hours a week, doing 5 jobs a day. And that's just their mindset. But they're like, oh, but after a couple of months, the tech can't handle that anymore. And so their motivation becomes, I don't want to lose those guys, so I need to hire new ones. But we have this always on, it's okay to be overworked, workaholism is a cool thing mentality, and it ends up burning our people out. And if we aren't able to have those conversations and really connect with them and say, hey, man, you're struggling right now, you need to take tomorrow off. And they trust that that's okay. Because how many people in the trades, if their boss said, hey, you need to take tomorrow off, don't worry about it, are like, am I being fired? They would have no idea what that means.
Well, this leads into my next question, which has to do with the generational shift in hiring in general. And one of your taglines is making the trades cool again. And so where did that tagline come from? So like, when did this trade stop being cool? And
Yeah.
also, have you seen a generational shift when it comes to just applicants and hiring and things in general? I heard it on some sort of social media out there that this new Gen Z, the new thing is to bring a parent with you to your interviews. I don't know if you've heard that, but
I have heard
50%
about
of
that.
Gen Zers are bringing their mom or their dad with them to their interviews. So tell me your thoughts on the generational shift when it comes to hiring.
I think that if you were in the trades, just to be clear, I consider myself in the trades. The trades are hella cool. You know, I'm talking to my kids about getting into the trades. Like, you don't need college. There's so many other opportunities, which is a big narrative inside of the trades right now. But I think that probably about 40, maybe 30 years ago, the trades started losing some of the cool factor. And then when knowledge work became the thing, everybody wants to go work for Facebook and Google and Apple. And now there's work from home jobs and everything else. It's not that the trades aren't cool. They just didn't keep up with the cool factor that all these other jobs have. I mean, it's something like 60% of job seekers want a hybrid work environment now, which means they get to pick when they work from home or when they work from the office. That's insane. It's like, for the trades, that'll never fly. Like, I mean, when a robot replaces you, maybe you can work from home, but that's it.
Yeah.
And so I think what happened is, if you look at the generations, and I don't want to spend too much time on them, but if you go back to what they call the greatest generation, which is during the Great Depression, right? Great-great-grandparents. And you go back and look at them, they came out of the Depression and said, you know what? They taught their kids, the boomers, you need to get a job. You need to stick with that job. You need to pour everything you can into that job because they'll give you a pension and you'll have a retirement and you won't have to rely on the government for stuff. Well, then the boomers made it through a couple of wars and they're like, this isn't that bad. So what do? They raised their Gen X and millennial kids to focus on experiences. Life is short. Do what you want. Be what you want. What do you want to do for vacation? Like, the boomers didn't get that opportunity. Mom and dad wanted to go to Disneyland. You were going to Disneyland whether you wanted to or not. But as the boomers raised their kids, they're like, kids, where do you want to go on vacation? And all of a sudden, the kids had a seat at the table and had a say, because those boomer parents said, hey, I don't want my kids to go work and slave for somebody for 30 years. And now these Gen Xers and millennials are having kids that are now the Gen Z and Alpha, and we're raising them to say, hey, you know what? Let's get out there and connect with people. Like, let's really focus on you doing what you can to contribute to society and make a difference and really create an impact, because the bigger the impact, the bigger the paycheck, the bigger the reward. We're teaching our kids these things. But what happened is, when knowledge work came up, you had all these boomer parents telling their kids, don't go into construction. Don't go into construction. It's not sexy. It's not fun to talk about with my friends at the country club. You know, don't go into that. Go get a degree, because when you get a college degree, now you have a chance to work for a Facebook or a Google or an Apple or something like that. And so the parents started to disconnect themselves from the trades. And now here we are 20, 25 years later, and people struggle. They look at college first. They look at other opportunities before they look at the trades as a viable option, because their parents look at it and say, I don't want any self-respecting kid of mine being a smelly plumber.
I alluded to this in the episode where they recorded my story, where Justin interviewed me. And one of the hardest conversations I had to have was with my boomer parents when I wanted to switch from being a mechanical engineering major to a horticultural major, going from engineering to landscaping. They didn't see the fruitfulness of it and the way that I did. And look where it's led me today. I'm in, tech software for the trades.
We're limited. And I think the big reason we're limited as being in the trades, we've not made it an attractive, viable option.
Right.
I mentioned this on a podcast I was on a couple of weeks ago. 46% of people in America get college degrees. And when you look at the trades, they talk about, earn while you learn. Don't end up with college debt. Don't do this. Don't do that. And come be in the trades. Well, why aren't we talking to the 56% who don't choose college? Like, for some reason, we pick the hardest path and then we get mad when it doesn't work. Let's go after the 56% that don't choose college, and let's just talk to them and ignore the people who've decided on college, because their parents are so influential. You're probably not going to win there anyway.
Well, we do need the people, those people. We need the doctors, the lawyers, to support the other. And so let's focus on the ones who aren't headed down that path, because they'll be the ones easier to persuade and easier
Yeah.
to attract.
And we have a lot of people working at our company who didn't go to college and are doing fantastic. And I'm one of them. But there's also a lot of people who did go to college. And I think there is a stereotype of like, well, if you didn't go to college, then the trades are for you. But hey, the other 40%, 46% that did go to college, hey, the trades are still for you. Like you can still come and be a super successful technician or manager or what have you in the trades and make a great living. Ryan, I want to ask you, we've talked about your book a few times here, and I kind of wanted to bring that back up. And just first off, like, where was the motivation when you decided to write the book? Was it a thing you were thinking about for years and then you were just like, all right, I'm going to do it? Was it an overnight epiphany? How'd that come to fruition?
I wrote my first book right before the pandemic hit, and it was a small little 60-page book, published it on Amazon. And it was just some interview ideas that I'd had. And it was good. And I got a lot of great feedback. And people would always ask me, like, okay, this is great. This is one piece of it. What's the rest? What's the rest? What's the rest? And then we developed our training and coaching program to teach the principles that are in this book to our clients, help them implement it. And then we train their people how to execute. And I realized that I had this vision for our company, which was to create positive work environments for 500,000 employees, because their companies know how to attract, hire, and retain the best. And that really what I wanted. And the motivation for me was that there are families out there who mom and dad go to work and slave for a small business or medium-sized business. And they put in so much extra effort because they're short-staffed, because their leadership team doesn't know how to attract and hire the best. And if we could make an impact for that family, we could make an impact for another. And then even though these people aren't self-employed like my dad was, their kids get to grow up with mom and dad coming home at a normal time, not having to work after the kids go to bed or work on the weekends or do all of these things that we've just become accustomed to because so many companies out there don't know how to hire and retain. But I realized if I wanted to make such a big impact in the industry, I had to get it into more people's hands. And writing a book, and more importantly, I think recording the audiobook was the way to do that. But it took a couple years to get the book done. Really did. I learned that I don't like to write, but I had a lot to say.
Well, congratulations on that. I think that's something a lot of people think about, and the ability to get that done is definitely something to be proud of. You mentioned you can get the book on the website, and it's a little less expensive than the Amazon route. Where do the listeners go to find that book?
Yeah, they can go to my website and they go to corematters.com/free book. And when they go there, I do charge a little shipping and handling fee just to offset some of my costs, but I'm happy to mail you a copy of the book and send you a bunch of bonuses too. So we got a bunch of bonus materials, downloads that we talk about in the book, but we'll actually email those to you as well.
Perfect. Well, I'm headed that way right now because we're a fast growing company and we're probably going to hire at least a dozen people or more this year. And so this podcast is perfect for myself, and I'm sure so many other trade professionals out there.
I will definitely be buying it, ordering it all as well. I currently have 22 open positions on my team. So everything that you're saying is super important to me. But I also know your podcast, I'm sure it's available on all podcast networks, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those. So what can people learn from listening to Titans of the Trades?
As you said, I want to make the trades cool again. And there are so many cool stories to be shared. Yeah. And so Titans of the Trades, it's a podcast where we share stories and strategies from industry titans, powerhouses inside blue collar businesses. Most of them are going to be with owners, leaders, people that support the industry in a way that you can walk away from one of my episodes, which by the way, aren't very long. Don't worry, like 20, 25 minutes, enough to get from one job site to the next. And
perfect.
You're going to walk away with 1 or 2 action items in every episode, something you can go put into your business today to start getting better results.
Love that.
Love it.
I love the length too. Like you said, perfect, one car ride length there. Well, as we wrap up, Ryan, you've given us a lot of great information and nuggets today. One thing we always like to end with is our trade secret. So we ask you to share something that you've learned just watching your dad, growing up in the trades, working with all the companies that you work with that you can't find in a book, that you can't find, listening to a podcast, just something that you've inherently grown to know is true over your times in the trades. So would you want to share your trade secret with us today?
If I look back at the companies that I've worked with over the years and the work that we do, it's that stop worrying about being everything to everyone. Find your tribe, attract them to be a part of your tribe, and stop worrying about casting a wide net. You've heard the riches are in the niches. And it's that same idea when it comes to recruiting, building a team, even serving your customers.
I love that. I think you demystified a lot of things today in terms of there's not a labor shortage. It's a technical hiring issue. And you've given us a lot of ways to create the vision, create the story, go out and get the best people. And to end on that is a perfect way, because I totally agree. Let's find the niche, let's find the tribe, and focus on what you're good at. Try to be the best person in the world at that one thing. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Ryan, so much for your time today. We look forward to seeing what else you have coming down the line and releasing and learning more from Core Matters.
Thank you.